Hello everyone. Welcome to Anime Series, the home of horror, mystery, and emotional anime stories. Here, we dive into the darkest corners of your favorite anime worlds. Twisted plots, haunting music, and unforgettable moments, all in one place. If you love fear, feel pain, and crave suspense, you're in the right world. So sit back, wear your headphones, and let the nightmares begin. Chapter 1, Concerning the Characters. Hi there. I'm Katsuko Mizuki Kaht Mizuki, but you can call me Katsuko, okay? I'll be your guide for this chapter, and I'm also one of Atami's original characters that will pop up in the story, along with my good evil rival friend Unari Sabashi Oo na ri Sahbishi. Atami, dude, stop breaking the fourth wall. Sorry. Unari and I are just a couple of girls who moved to Konoha 5 years ago, that's better. Okay, so let me give you a real quick briefing on the setting, characters, etc. Konoha was a bustling city, with many people living and working in it. It was the most beautiful city in the Fire County note, it's county, as in Lake County, not country, as in Jamaica. One of its more outstanding points of mention was the famous Konoha High School original, which could school up to 156 students per grade. The largest class of the school was currently the class of 2011, aka the current sophomore class. It had over 160 students altogether, but luckily they all had a wide range of interests, so the classrooms were seldom packed too uncomfortably, except of course homeroom. There were many students, but the ones we're focusing on are the only actually important ones. First, there were the popular girls. You know, the kind that always wore makeup and clothes that were in style, and often wore enough perfume to alert a person of their approach 5 minutes before they were actually in sight. Ino Yamanaka, the leader of the group, was an unquestionably beautiful blonde wit, sparkling blue eyes and a smile that made boys melt. She always kept her hair up in a ponytail, where it dangled down to her shoulder blades. She was bossy, arrogant, and sometimes a little irrational. But she was still the one to go to if you'd just broken up with someone or if you needed help with how to dress or act on a first date. Ino was the top in her class at cheerleading and debate, and Dee had a monster crush on a certain raven-haired boy we'll talk about later on. Her obsession with this boy sometimes led her to get lower grades. In fact, her highest grade point average had been a 3.45. Her friend and rival in love was Sakura Haruno, who for some reason or another had been dyeing her hair bright candy pink since she was in 4th grade. She had a slightly larger forehead than the others, but one tended to overlook that when they looked at the rest of her. She had a nice figure, like Ino, sparkling emerald eyes that seemed to flash like lightning when she was angry, and a cute, cheery smile that made her look like an innocent little grade school student. She was second in debate, but preferred tennis to cheerleading. Like Ino, she had a monster crush on the same guy who will remain unnamed for now, but unlike Ino, her obsession with this boy didn't get in the way of her straight A's. It did, however, led her to grow her hair out, and now she had that hairstyle where you pull just your bangs back into a cute little ponytail that hung loosely in the back. The rest of her hair hung to her mid-back in a sort of waterfall cut. Their friend Tamari I needed a third girl. Shut Up was the most belligerent of the three, and she looked it, too. She had hard green eyes, a smirk that made boys want to protect their precious heirlooms, let's say, and dusty blonde hair which she always kept in a loose ponytail, which still allowed her hair to fall to her back, just a few inches shorter than Sakura's. She was one of the few girls in the school's wrestling team, and was great at crafts. Though she always made sculptures of weasels and fans and scythes. Weird, anyway, she didn't really have a crush on anyone, but she was slightly intrigued by a certain other beau, who seemed too stuck up to do much of anything. Her grades were right between Sakura's and Ino's, with a grade point average of 3.75, and she often picked fights with Ino and Sakura just for the hell of arguing, but the three never held grudges, and were closer than red on bricks. No, not that way, you sick perverts. I mean, they were really good friends. I give up. Next were the not-so-popular girls, Tenten and me. Tenten was a sweet, but slightly short-tempered girl with short brown hair that was always kept in 2 little dancer's knots on the top of her head. She was a tomboy, and never Wore makeup or perfume except on special occasions. Her outfit was normally a pair of denim capris and a pink tank top with a goldenrod dragon on the back and a little goldenrod dragon head on the left breast of the shirt. And damn it, get your minds out of the gutter, purrs. A-. Tenten had a crush on a certain long-haired boy who we won't name just yet, which is why she was my enemy, because I also happened to like that guy, too. She enjoyed archery and literature, but she seemed to have a lot of trouble with science, for some strange reason. You'll have to figure out what I'm like for yourself. Hey, Uneri, how'd you get in? Why do you have a frying pan? Wham! This is Uneri speaking. I have momentarily taken over as narrator so that you don't have to figure out what she's like yourselves. Katsuko was a hot-headed girl with dazzling bright blood red hair, as opposed to one of the boys' dusty red hair and piercing emerald eyes. She was usually very hyper, and loved to get into fights. He was considered one of the guys because she didn't like to hang out with the girls, something about not wanting to come off as a prissy girly girl. Her usual attire is a pair of blue jeans with the right knee of the pants torn from one seam to the other. In other words, the front of her jeans knees is completely torn open, a black Linkin Park shirt which proclaims her fangirl obsession over the band, although sometimes she wears a white tank top which is very form-fitting, and 3 earrings, 2 silver or gold hoops, depending on the occasion, and 1 diamond, ruby, amethyst, or sapphire stud. This depending on her mood upon waking up. She wears a pair of running shoes which were probably white at some point. Now there's so much dirt, dried mud, and water stains on them that it's hard to tell what the original color was. Even the laces have taken on a nice dirty tan color. Ah, Katsuko, you're awake again. Good, I've just finished. Now, let's be civil here. I'll friggin' murder you. No, wait, I can. We're experiencing some technical difficulties here. Be back in a flash. Hey, it's Katsuko again. I had to, beat the snot out of a certain black-haired meanie who decided to be funny and knock me out with a cast iron frying pan. Anyway, finally, there were the lower than low girls, the ones who either chose to be loners or were simply too shy to even be noticed by anyone. First was Hinata Hyuga, who was the cousin of a certain long-haired boy that I happened to like. She had almost iridescent black hair that was kept down all the time. It reached her back, like Sakura's. But her hair was evenly cut and her bangs were much shorter, which gave her the appearance of, well, a wallflower, which she was. That's right, ladies and gents, Hinata Hyuga, Kusi. N of one of the most annoying jerks in school whom I liked was shyer and quieter than a late-blooming summer daisy. So it surprised everyone that her crush was the loudest, wildest, and most flamboyant boy in the school, who shall be named later. She usually wore a purple sweater and kinda baggy light blue jeans with snow-white tennis shoes. Her ears weren't pierced, and she didn't wear any jewelry, but she wore some makeup, which consisted of cover-up and a modest blush. On rare occasions she wore some mascara, but she usually saved the mascara for plays and dances. She had an awesome singing voice, too. Uneri Sabashi was the one who chose to be alone. She didn't like fitting in, said only spineless sheep should follow the crowd. Coincidentally, she was also an emo, and also had a crush on a certain long-haired boy that I liked first. She had short black hair, kept in kind of a mop cut, you know, uneven ends, kinda spiky, with bangs that are hard to keep out of your face with an oval-shaped white and ice blue bead in her bangs. The bead is mostly just a fashion statement, but I guess it keeps most of her hair out of her face, too. She's got this pale skin, like peachy ivory, and flawless beauty. She never wears makeup or perfume, and she's writing these poems. I've seen a few. I was surprised to find that the ones I stole, borrowed, from her weren't actually all that emo. They were actually mushy love poems. Which steamed me because I found out she doesn't just like my crush. It seems she also likes Sakura's crush and Temari's younger brother. She's got a crush on 3 guys. She'll go places, baby. And yes, feel free to speculate just how perverted I meant it to be. That's all the girls you need to know about. To sum it up, popular. Sakura, Ino, Temari. Friends of each other. In between, Tenten and me. Friends of Tenten's friends with Hinata. I hang with the guys. Low rank, Hinata and Uneri. Friends of Hinata's friends with everyone. B. Because she's so sweet she'll even be nice to jerks. Unary is your typical shun the world emo, if that gives you any idea. And now for the guys. First off is the popular guys, who always have hordes of fangirls chasing them down and or worshipping them. Sasuke Uchiha was the emo king of the group. He was always wearing a black shirt with his family emblem on the back and baggy black jeans that dragged the ground when he walked. His hair reminded me of a duck's butt, only I've never seen an iridescent black duck that hasn't gotten stuck in tar. Maybe that's how he styled it. Anyway, he had the pitch black eyes and light skin like Unary's, and he always had his friggin' hands in his pockets. He wore either black or navy blue Converses, and he had this superiority complex and a smirk that made girls melt. Or faint. In Unary's case, he didn't say much, but when he did, his voice was like liquid copper, smooth but with an edge that made it unique. Neji Hyuga was the other popular guy, with lush, long brown hair that was always down. He had deep, thoughtful lavender eyes and light peach skin. He always wore a plain tan t-shirt with baggy brown pants that were the same brand as Sasuke's, I could tell by the cut. He wore brown Converses and a small silver chain around his neck. He was into debate and wrestling, and like Sasuke never had anything lower than an A in terms of grades. He had that bad boy smirk that made girls wanna glomp him. I was one of the few who had enough restraint not to. You can ask Unary if you don't believe me. She's only tackled him twice. That's the few tackles Neji's ever gotten from one fangirl. Yes, well, shut up. Next are the boys who were in between, the ones who were just going along taking all the lumps of life. Naruto Uzumaki, the object of Hinata's monster crush, was the loudest, wildest, and most flamboyant boy in school. He was always pulling pranks on the teachers, and was rebellious to the extreme. He wore baggy blue jeans which were scored with about a dozen or so slash marks, which he earned when he pranked me and got kicked out the second floor window. He also wears a white shirt underneath a black denim vest with a red swirl on the back. His shoes are orange Converses with black shoe laces, what? Converses kick A, and he wore a green gem thing on a black cord around his neck. He had a diamond stud in one ear. And before the freshman school year for our class had ended, he'd told several people that over the summer he was going to pierce his tongue. He had a crush on Sakura, and I was constantly trying to set him up with Hinata. What? She was my best friend aside from Naruto and some of the other boys. Shikamaru was the laziest boy in school, sleeping through all his classes and yet somehow still managing to get straight A's. Everything he did and said was done and said in a way that suggested that he wasn't really as awake as he looked, which was a little worrying because he normally looked like he was half asleep to begin with. He had silver stud earrings and wore baggy black jeans, black tennis shoes, and a white t-shirt with a little cartoon deer on the front bottom left corner. He also wore a silver chain around his neck, but his necklace had a little deer head on it. His hair was dark brown, and was always kept in a high ponytail almost on top of his head. He wasn't really interested in finding his perfect match, but his favorite pastime was, snoozing. Although he was captain of the shogi team, an impressive feat as the previous shogi captain had been a sei. Nior who'd played shogi since he was 4. His friend, Choji Akamichi, was that largest kid in our class, at 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. He had spiky auburn hair and wore a red t-shirt and black pants. Despite all the kids making fun of him, Choji was actually a really nice person. He was also sensitive about 3 things: his friends, food, and his weight, not in that order. Last year he placed first in the school's hot dog eating competition, and second in the soda drinking competition. He placed second because it was right after the hot dog competition. Kiba Inuzuka always brought his dog to school. And because of that had many animal-loving friends, including yours truly. He had red fang-shaped tattoos on either cheek face, not butt, you perverted fangirls, spiky brown hair, tan skin. And a smile that girls adored and guys wanted to punch off his face. White and red striped tennis shoes, baggy gray jeans, a white shirt with 2 black stripes on each sleeve, and sharp fingernails were his outstanding features. His dog, Akamaru, was about the size of a toy poodle, and rode on his head most of the time. Akamaru was pure white except for his ears, which were a pretty chocolate brown color. Then of course there was the loner, the guy who flew under the radar and never really got the spotlight much. This guy had a deadly aura about him, the kind of aura that made you AR for your life and fall in love at the same time. He could have his pick of the ladies, and he never once spoke more than a few words at a time. This was, of course, Gaara, a boy with icy blue eyes and dusty red hair. His skin was pale, and he had no eyebrows, only very thick rings around his eyes. It wasn't eyeliner. Last year a very brave fool splashed Gaara in the face with a water balloon, the black rings around his eyes didn't fade or run at all. And of course the foolish person with good aim ended up in intensive care for about a month or two. Gaara wears a black shirt with a thick band of white around the collar, black pants, and black shoes, and has many different silver chains around his neck, each a different length. He wears one silver hoop and one ruby stud in each ear. ND has the symbol for love tattooed in blood red ink on his forehead. His black shirt has a low versus neck, so under it he wears a fishnet shirt. Don't tell anyone, but for some reason I really want to get to know him more. Let's review. Popular. Neji-kun and Sasuke. Friends of, their mirrors. Middles. Naruto, Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba. Friends of, various people. Mysterious. Gaara. Friend of, no idea. So, how was it? Hope you enjoy the story, and please leave comments, suggestions, ideas, whatever in your reviews. Cheesy pickup line, do you have a mirror in your pants? 'Cause I see myself in them. Last day of summer. Disclaimer, I have never owned Naruto. If I owned Naruto, I would be a character in it, stuck in a love pentagon with Naruto, Sasuke, Gaara, and Neji, and would be doing naughty things with all of them. Chapter 2. The summer of '08. Katsuko sat at her desk, trying to read the last 5 chapters of her story before hitting the sack for an early morning nap. She had yet up all night reading scary stories and hiding from ghosts with a flashlight on. It was an interesting book, something that Katsuko found quite difficult to find. It took a special mix of elements to catch her attention, but when she found it, she could read for hours without stopping to rest her eyes. It had taken her a mere 2 days to read this particular book, which had over 700 pages of 11-point typed words. Somebody knocked at her door. She didn't hear it. They knocked harder, for a longer time. She didn't flinch. Now they were kicking and punching her door repeatedly, making what most sounded like the drum solo for a song. It's way too friggin' hard to concentrate. She thought grumpily, reluctantly placing the bookmark in its place, and it was just getting exciting, too. If I get my hands on the person making all that noise, Without finishing her threat, she slammed the book shut and stomped over to her door. Gripping the handle mercilessly, she threw the door open and yelled, "What the heck? People are trying to read here." On the receiving end of her enraged scream was a terrified Naruto hiding behind an equally petrified Kiba and Akamaru. "Meep," Naruto said in a squeaky voice. "Is that Medusa or Katsuko?" Kiba wondered, still too terrified to move. Akamaru whimpered slightly, which we're going to assume is doggy speak for, Katsuko's scary when she's angry. "Oh, sorry," Katsuko said. Now looking very sheepish, "It's you guys. Wade want?" Naruto answered first, jumping out from behind Kiba and yelling triumphantly, "We wanted to see if you could come over to Shikamaru's place for a swim party." Now, any other girl would have asked if other girls would be there, too. But Katsuko, ever a tomboy, figured it would make her sound too girly to ask such a thing, and besides, she was one of the guys. What did it matter if she wasn't physically a guy? Would I ever? When's it starting? Kiba and Naruto exchanged grins and chorused, "It starts in 15 minutes. Better hurry up, Cats." She would have blushed if she'd been anyone else. Cats was her nickname because it was the first syllable of her name, and because she conveniently liked cats. She grinned and said, "Hang on. You're about to witness my record time in getting ready for something." She slammed the door shut. Inside yelps and rustles could be heard as she fought her clothes and long tangled hair. Shouts of, "Stupid F-ing hairbrush broke again," could also be heard before the door was once again torn open 45 seconds later, revealing a dressed, hair-brushed, and somehow teeth-brushed Katsuko. Grinning like she'd won first place in track and field. As usual, her hair was untouched and hung loosely around her shoulders. She wore her white tank top with a pair of denim shorts that went to the tops of her knees. Wait, huh? K-Cats, you're wearing, Naruto stammered, pointing at her shorts. You're actually showing off your legs. Kiba shouted, and hey wait, was his face turning pink? No, gotcha. Or did I? Got a problem with it? Katsuko asked, throwing her hip to one side and imitating Temari's smirk. Not at all. Kiba and Naruto chorused, for different reasons, of course. Good. Let's go, then. She yelled happily, grabbing both boys by the hands and taking off downstairs. Without stopping for breakfast, Katsuko, followed by Naruto and Kei. Iba, who'd somehow gotten away from Katsuko's iron grip of doom, charged out the front door, with Katsuko yelling over her shoulder, "Bye Dad. I'm gonna go to Shikamaru's house. Be back soon." "Okay, bye." "Wait, you're going where?" her dad yelled, chasing after them. "Cheese it." Katsuko yelled, knowing if they were caught she'd be locked in her room all day while Naruto and Kiba would have to be scrapped off the walls with a spatula after her dad was done having a word with them. She didn't want to think about what he would do to Akamaru. Her father was very protective over his tomboy daughter. You would be, too. If your child had already broken all of her arms and legs at least twice before 16 years had passed. Meanwhile, at Shikamaru's house, the only guests to attend so far were Choji and, luckily for Katsuko, Neji. Unluckily for Katsuko, Tenten, yes, he invited everyone important, plus some new faces, had also arrived, and was currently making eyes at Neji, who was either ignoring her or didn't notice her. High-pitched giggles could be heard as Sakura, Ino, and Temari entered Shikamaru's backyard, wearing skimpy two-piece bathing suits and oversized sunglasses. Behind them came Kiba and Naruto, who both had a hand clamped over Katsuko's mouth to prevent her from mouthing off at the popular girls in front of her. Kiba was rolling his eyes and Naruto kept yelping something along the lines of, "Stop biting my hand, cats." It was well known that Katsuko despised the popular girls with a passion, even if she was usually more controlled about it. As Katsuko and her two, muzzles, walked over to Shikamaru's table, Sakura's voice suddenly chorused, "Ah, Katsuko has two boyfriends. That's so cute." Katsuko's face turned a deep shade of red as her eyes said "Oh." And fire and lightning randomly cracked in the distance. Naruto and Kiba looked at each other and then looked at Shikamaru. "We're doomed," they chorused. Katsuko lunged for the pink-haired popular girl, restrained by Shikamaru, Choji, Naruto, Kiba, Akamaru, who was biting her ankle, Tenten, and Neji. Even with all the people holding her, Katsuko fought and screamed a long stream of profanities that, while very impressive, would probably change the story's rating to an M. Another random bolt of lightning struck some random place, followed by a faint, "Ow. What the hell? Come over here and say that to my face, you little bye." Katsuko screamed, cut off just in time by Kiba, who clamped his hand firmly on her mouth and hissed, "Cats, shut up already before they murder Yao." Katsuko bit into his hand and screamed, "I'd like to see them try to hurt. Hey, is that root beer?" Her attention was suddenly drawn to a root beer, unopened and held in front of her face by Uneri, who had arrived unseen during the commotion. "You can have it if you stop trying to kill the popular girls," she said, looking extremely cool even though she was standing in front of the only girl who could pitch a person of Choji's weight about 50 meters. Katsuko nodded vigorously and said, "Okay. Root beer, root beer, root beer." Everyone let go of her and sighed in relief as she went for the soda. Uneri held it over her head and said, "Sit." Katsuko crouched like a puppy begging for scraps. "Roll over." She rolled onto her back. "Up." She stood up. "Good girl." And Uneri handed the soda over to a puppy-eyed Katsuko, who took it and drank half of it in one shot. "Is it really a good idea to give her more sugar?" Neji asked, eyeing Katsuko warily as she started talking to Naruto. She looked like she was plotting something with him. And worse yet, it looked like whatever they were planning sounded really fun to Naruto. "Don't worry," Uneri said icily, "I know how to deal with hyper people like Katsuko. I'll take your word for it." Neji answered, caught a little off guard by the sudden change in Uneri's attitude. Suddenly, someone screamed, "Cannonball no jutsu." There was a tsunami-sized splash. H as said person's cannonball landed squarely in the pool. Shrieks rose from Sakura, Ino, and Tamari as most of the water landed on their sunbathing spot near the edge of the pool. Furious, they began pitching anything that wasn't theirs at Katsuko, who was frantically dodging sunglasses, towels, shoes, an iPod courtesy of Shikamaru, suntan lotion, water bottles, and empty soda cans as she swam like a madman for the edge of the pool. Finally, she dragged herself from the pool and dodged behind Choji, who was randomly part of her plan, just in time to avoid the last projectiles to be pitched at her. Meanwhile, Naruto jumped out in front of Choji, shaking 2 soda cans. What happened next was chaos. 3 things happened at once. Ino, Tamari, and Sakura charged for Katsuko, who was still huddled behind Choji, who was standing behind Naruto. Naruto threw both cans to the ground. And Gaara, who'd been sitting outside the gate to the backyard to avoid the crowd, decided to come and see what was causing all the commotion. For Katsuko, time and sound stopped only long enough to see Gaara's first 2 steps into the backyard. Splak. Crack. Foosh. The cans exploded, releasing a miniature tidal wave on Ino, Sakura, Tamari, Naruto, Choji, Neji, Uneri, Kiba, and Gulp, and mostly on Gaara. More shrieks rose from the popular girls, who had tackled Naruto and were attempting to either strangle him or bash his head into the pavement repeatedly. Then everything went silent as they realized that Gaara had been sprayed the most. Suddenly Katsuko didn't think her party prank had been so funny, after all. A.N. Bahahahaha. Cliffy. PH33RM3H. You don't have to comment, but the more comments I get, the faster I'll upload. Oh, and this is my story, but it first appeared on Under Wrath Flamesoul's name. So don't worry, I didn't steal it. Don't even try to say that I did, because I know there are people here who would jump at the chance to accuse me of plagiarism. Random Ks. Tion. What's the difference between a carnation and a rose? Answer and you get a treat. Last day of summer too. Disclaimer, do I seriously seem like someone smart enough to come up with characters and plotlines as complex as the ones in Naruto? If you said yes, thank you. If you said no, sigh, you're right. I own nothing. I'm going to go sit in my emo corner. Chapter 3, oh shit, it's still the last day of summer. An eerie silence echoed throughout the backyard as Gaara finally growled, who's the genius that came up with that? A.N. Remember, Gaara's the guy with the evil aura of doom and death surrounding him. A girl with bright red hair stood up, whom he instantly recognized as Katsuko. For once she actually looked sheepish as she walked towards him, keeping her head down like she was embarrassed. When she was 3 feet away, she raised her eyes to peek at him through her bangs and said, "Sorry, Gaara. The whole thing was my planning. I didn't expect you to come in before the soda." Her voice trailed off. As she looked back to the ground, anticipating something like what happened after the water balloon incident last year to happen to her, too. Gaara shot her a glare that he was capable of melting rocks and freezing lava before going over to his beach bag to retrieve a towel to dry off with. Katsuko took the chance to slide back behind Choji, who promptly pushed her away while yelling frantically, "Hey! Don't hide behind me. He'll murder me to get to you. Some friend you are." Katsuko yelled, sticking her tongue out. "I thought buddies put their necks on the line for each other. If you can find Choji's neck, I'll be amazed," Naruto grumbled, drying off with the many napkins that had randomly appeared on the table with the pizzas. "What?" Choji roared. "You heard me, fatty." Naruto. "That word's ta, food fight." Uneri, sensing the oncoming chaos, grabbed the nearest person who wasn't holding food and dragged him under the nearest table, just as the food started flying. "Ow." Neji grumbled as he hit the pavement. "Thanks, I guess." "Yeah," Uneri said offhandedly, "whatever." Katsuko, meanwhile, was throwing slices of cheese pizza at anyone within 5 feet of her. So far Naruto and Kiba were cheesed beyond recognition. Ino and Sakura were hiding somewhere, while Tamari was pitching glasses of punch at everyone. Shikamaru was doing what Lu Ked like a really cool dance as he tried to avoid the flying food and raining punch. Choji was eating the food thrown at him and throwing basketball-shaped mounds of food at random people. Akamaru was stuck to the pavement, glued there by sticky cheese from the pizzas. Gaara had disappeared. Tenten was cowering in the pool. And of course Uneri and Neji were hiding under a table, waiting the chaos out. After about 15 minutes of food fighting, they ran out of ammo, and were now faced with the task of cleaning up Storm Zone A, aka Shikamaru's barely recognizable backyard. It looked like a hurricane had ripped through it. Pizza and chips floated or sank to the bottom of the pool. The pavement was littered with cups, popped balloons, pizzas, chips, and crumbled pieces of brownies. Trees were covered in cheese and more cups. Balloon ribbons hung off lamps, chairs, and Naruto's hair. And the only people who came out clean were Ino, Sakura, Uneri, Neji, and Gaara. Though her attempt to hide was wise. Tenten had managed to get pizza cheese stuck in her hair, and her face was splattered with sauce. Shikamaru looked devastated as he surveyed his poor backyard. "Ah, geez, my dad's gonna kill me," he said. Sounding like he was actually awake for once. He looked at the others expectantly. Katsuko said, "I have to be home by, now." She dashed out of the yard. "Me and Kiba have to, make sure she doesn't get mugged," Naruto said, grabbing Kiba and Akamaru and running after her. "We're leaving," Tamari said as she, Ino, and Sakura left the yard. "I'm not cleaning anything," Uneri said, sauntering off. "Neither am I," Neji said, walking after her. Gaara glared again before he, too, left. Tenten looked at Shikamaru apologetically, gathered her things, and walked away. "Choji," Shikamaru's friend sighed and said, "Where are the rags?" Katsuko, Tenten, Hinata, and Uneri, dragged against her will by Katsuko, gathered at Tenten's house for a sleepover, sat in a circle for a game of truth or dare. Katsuko finished the bottle of soda she was drinking and placed it in the center of the circle, spinning it to see who her first victim would be. It landed on Tenten. Groaning could be heard from Uneri. "Tenten-chan, truth or dare? I don't want to have to admit something embarrassing," Tenten thought as she said, "Dare." Katsuko grinned evilly and said, "I dare you to tackle Neji-kun tomorrow." What? She can't do that. See, can she? Uneri-chan. Tenten looked at Uneri hopefully. "Rules are rules, Tenten," Uneri said. "You can't make rules after the game starts. You have to tackle him tomorrow." Tenten bowed her head and sighed, "Hi." She took the bottle and spun it. It landed on Uneri, who immediately said, "Truth. Is it true that you like 3 different guys, Uneri-chan?" Uneri's eyes widened as she said, "And Nani? How'd you find out about?" "So it's a yes." "Hi." Katsuko jumped up, pointed at Tenten, and said, "Ha. Told you." Awkward silence. Oops. The rest of the night was spent trying to keep Uneri from murdering Katsuko via cast iron frying pan. Meanwhile, in the school, 3 people-shaped shadows and a little furball snuck quietly into the school. Having gotten the keys from the janitor after giving him an Ika Ika Paradise book. 1 people shadow carried paintbrushes, and the other 2 had cans of paint. Quietly, all 4 shadows snuck into the school and got to work with their evil plans. Well, maybe not too quietly. "Ow. Kiba, you stepped on my foot." "Naruto, watch where you point that brush." "Huh, Ak, you painted on me." "Oops, sorry." "Arf. Akamaru, keep it down." "Rough. Huh, rough. What do you mean, we're busted?" The lights flicked on as Principal Tsunade walked in. Kiba, Naruto, Shikamaru, and Akamaru looked at her, frozen. She looked at them and slurred, "What are ya doing?" "She's drunk." Naruto hissed, "Trick her." Kiba said, "We're helping refinish the walls." She looked at him for a second, then said, "Yay. Whatever. I'm going to my office," and she walked off, leaving the pranksters to continue their evil plans. Katsuko couldn't sleep. So, after everyone had gone to sleep and after her head stopped throbbing from the frying pan, she'd gone to sit on Tenten's roof and stare at the stars, trying to find the different constellations. But she couldn't concentrate on that. So she decided to just stare into space and continue worrying about tomorrow. "Chia, I'm not ready to be a junior. I hate school." "Yeah, but Neji will be there, too. Doesn't make things better." "Ooh, I'm not sure he even notices me half the time." "Well, he definitely noticed you today." "Oh, joy." She sighed and rested her head on her knees, staring aimlessly at whatever caught her attention. A sudden meow brought her attention to a little black kitten with big gold eyes, staring up at her like it thought she was its mommy. It couldn't have been more than a month old, yet it looked as though it was on its own. It was skinny, like it hadn't eaten for a few days. A wave of pity flashed over Katsuko, and she gently picked it up and wrapped it in her blanket before jumping off of the roof with a grunt. Her ankles, used to this sort of action, absorbed the shock with little trouble or pain, and she rose and went inside after only a second's pause. Having taken care of kittens before, Suko instinctively went to her backpack and pulled out a powdered milk formula, the kind babies drink. She had been babysitting her baby cousin Erica the day before. It was difficult to hold a kitten while preparing baby formula. But she managed, and soon she was back in her sleeping bag, bottle feeding the little black mound of fur until it dozed off. What to name it? Katsuko wondered, automati. Callie assuming it was a feral kitten since no one on Tenten Street owned a cat, much less a queen with kits. A polite peek under its tail told her the kitten was male, which made the naming easier. Star. Nah. Coal. Ash. Hell no. Midnight. Perfect. Midnight, she whispered softly, lying next to the kitten with her arm curled protectively around him. That's such a. She was caught off by a yawn. And fell asleep before she could finish her sentence. Midnight shifted in his sleep and purred softly as Katsuko's breath landed on his ears.